The waiver wire after week 10 is for true sickos, so if that's you, these are the only 10 players that you should be adding. And we're going to start with Woody Marks. I try and keep this to players that are available in 50+% of leagues, but did want to give a slot to Woody Marks here to start out. He is available in 37.9% of leagues right now. So if he's out there, he should absolutely not be after this week 10 workhorse usage that we've seen. 14 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown, plus 2 more catches for 18 yards. Played 60 of 75 snaps in that comeback win over Jacksonville. So that's real every down usage right before kind of the heavy weeks of the season when we need to try and get through the buys, all that. So if he's out there, he should not be. He's actually a guy that I'd be trading for as well in leagues where he is not on the waiver wire. And the reason for that has been like the league best receiving efficiency, right? After 8 weeks, he's led all running backs in yards per reception. He's ranked 10th in yards per touch. So his touches are coming with legit big play upside. And that's exactly what I want from one of these players that's one injury away potentially. We'll talk about Chubb in a second, but it's one of those situations where I think that he could potentially be like one of those players that makes a huge difference down the road in those spike weeks, because this offensive line is one of the worst in the entire league, and he's still showing some really big plays, right? So in that 49ers upset, he turned 11 carries into 4 targets, 111 yards, thanks to that 23-yard run, a 50-yard catch, showing exactly how fast he can kind of flip a box score. So that's something that we really want, especially in a situation where this Texans offensive line is pretty terrible and they don't have a lot of explosion on their offense in general. So the committee already kind of tilting towards Marks, as I kind of alluded to. He outsnapped Chubb in this game pretty heavily, even 35-26 in week 9 as well. So he's kind of been one of those players that we've been waiting to get a little bit more opportunity. Houston even traded a 2026 third-round pick to move up in the draft and get him. So I think he's one of those league winners that's kind of hiding in plain sight. 16 touches, that workhorse kind of volume. If he gets that against Buffalo in week 11, he's not going to be available on any waiver wire. So I think this is your last chance to get him. I also think this might be one of your last chances to trade for him, but we'll talk more about trade targets in a later video this week. Tyler Allgeier, again, another one of those guys that's not available everywhere, but technically 72.2% of leagues he is available on waivers, and he might be the best one injury away player in the NFL in fantasy for sure. So he's got that goal line hammer kind of role in Bijan Robinson's Atlanta high-paced offense, right? So he's not going to take Bijan's role by any means, but Tyler Allgeier's already scored 6 rushing touchdowns with 3 multi-score or goal line heavy games. So week 2, 4, 6, 8, and that 2 touchdown game that we just had in week 10. So he's exactly the kind of like touchdown heavy player that realistically is being called upon in any role right now in any game script. So he's one of those guys that could be a flex if you get in a pinch on bye weeks, but also have standalone value in other weeks as well. So like that red zone, kind of kill the clock roll, the standalone TD upside. He's one of those guys that should not be on any waiver wires and instantly becomes a league winner if something happens to Bijan. The types of games where you can play him are these ones where you think Atlanta can actually compete. We saw them beat the Vikings, and I mean, they absolutely blew the doors off the Vikings, but this run game has kind of been a little bit more of a 1-2 punch than people realize. I think he's more than just a handcuff. He's like the exact type of running back that you want to stash on your bench if he is available. Again, 70% of leagues. Devin Singletary. It's not a flashy name, right? Available in 62.9% of leagues. He's kind of that boring vet, but he's already taken over this backfield once before. So I definitely am not ruling that out. Week 9, obviously the first game without Cam Scatterboo. It was interesting that the coaches pivoted mid-game to let Singletary lead this backfield, 10 touches, 51 yards, while Tracy was held to 5 carries. And weeks 9 and 10 together, he's got 21 catches, 124 total yards, proving that they actually trust him to handle some real work when they need a spark. So this backfield's kind of developed into like a little bit of a messy committee, but I think it's kind of interesting to go after the pass catcher in a situation like that, because when the Giants are losing, he's going to be the one that's on the field, and he's going to be one that continues to get touches. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. So I think he's kind of like a 1A, 1B plus situation. So even if he's only getting like 10 touches right now, if something does happen to Tyrone Tracy, Singletary could come and take this entire role versus Tracy. I'm not so sure that he would be able to take over all the pass catching as well. So there's like a little bit of a contingency plan here for getting him on waivers. And if he is available, I think rest of season, it's a situation where I think that the pass catching running back has much better matchups than the ones on the ground. And then game script, obviously with the Giants, the way they're playing is going to tilt his direction as well. Let's talk about Tyjae Spears. I feel like he's been on this list a few times now, but he is in 62.1% of leagues. He is available. So kind of like that near committee, but he's already getting the volume. His touches have been climbing every single week, which is really nice to see. In week 8, he turned 12 touches into 82 total yards and a touchdown. So he can actually kind of cash in when the workload does show up for him. So I think that he's kind of like the more explosive back in a bad offense. So in that Colts game, Spears really just had more juice. He was a lot more shifty. And I think his cuts were really strong enough to break tackles at the line, which is more than we can say for Tony Pollard at times this year. And over the last 2 seasons, he's really shown the ability to catch passes at a pretty elite clip as well. So he's had pretty clear ceiling when the volume hits. And that's exactly what we want in these committee, ambiguous backfield situations. We talk about this a lot in the season lead up, in draft season, all of that. But even this time of the year too, if you can hit on a Tyjae Spears down the stretch and he ends up being the lead back, one injury away, again, type of player, these are the type of running backs that can win you your league. So if the Titans are basically going nowhere, I just basically think the explosive back should not be on waivers, essentially. So if this season continues to be a struggle, which I think it probably will be, Spears is the kind of guy that you pay up for and at least stash just in case they want the fresher, more explosive back. They start to give him more carries down the road. Amari Demercado, probably one of the last weeks that he's going to be available as well. I just think the situation is kind of muddy right now, even with Trey Benson. So Demercado is available in 93.1% of leagues right now. He's been explosive every time he's touched the ball. Over the last 3 active games, Demercado ripped a 64-yard rushing, 64 yards rushing on 4 carries. And then in week 10, 79 yards on 14 carries in week 9. So, he's really popped from an efficiency standpoint. And that's really all you can ask for a team like this that's not really doing a whole lot. Bam Knight, he's starting on paper, but Demercado is the one that's actually been kind of winning on the field. So the Cowboys in week 9, Bam Knight got the start, but then he only got 27 yards. Demercado is the one that ended up getting 14 carries and 79 yards. So it's kind of like a battle that we're trying to make sure that we get access to if one of these guys can separate. So the big plays are really what can actually swing games and actually swing weeks for you in fantasy. So I think this is probably the last time to grab the hot hand. We'll see what happens. Trey Benson's remained sidelined, but he's eligible to be activated at any moment. So we'll see. I think this is still one to grab and stash on your bench and see if it plays out a little bit before people connect the dots. Maybe the injury is not as it's not as bad as I think with Trey Benson. Maybe everything's according to schedule, but if not, he could still be a guy that helps your team down the road. So we've talked about 5 running backs: Demercado, Spears, Singletary, Tyler Allgeier, and Woody Marks. Now we're going to talk about 5 wide receivers that should not be on any waiver wires. We're going to start with Tre Tucker. So he's available in 56.3% of leagues right now. The Cowboys matchup coming up has been an absolute cheat code. Dallas has allowed the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers, a league worst 16 touchdowns to wide receivers as well. So Tucker is going to walk into one of the juiciest week 11 spots on the slate. So we're a little bit blinded, I think, by this kind of gross Thursday Night Football game versus Denver. I think Tucker is still one of the ones that it looks a little bit worse than it actually was for him, right? He had a touchdown wiped out by an offensive pass interference. So we could be looking at him in a completely different way. He's already proven that spike week ceiling. He's already kind of gone off for an 8, 145, and 3 game. He owns multiple weeks with 4 catches, 60 plus yards. I think he's really got that big potential in games where we think things are going to open up a little bit. And that definitely is what we could see versus Dallas. If there was a cure for Geno Smith, it's probably this Dallas defense. So the wide receiver run routes that we're already seeing is pretty obvious, right? With Jacoby Myers traded to Jacksonville, all 46 of Geno's dropbacks, he already was on the field. He already has games of 5+ receptions even without all of that happen. So I think he's the guy that you might have to overpay for and overbid for on the waiver wire in week 11 if he is out there. But you get that wide receiver route role, and the proven deep ball splash plays already against a Cowboys defense that's been just roasted by wide receivers. So he's one of the ones that I would be actively prioritizing. If you didn't listen to me last week, that's not great. But Parker Washington did go out there and score this past week. So hopefully he's not available on your waiver wire anymore. But he is available in 83.1% of leagues right now. So he's already producing like a feature wide receiver. Weeks 9 and 10, he turned 16 targets into 123 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 on offense, 1 on a punt return. So I think it's repeatable volume. I don't think it's a random spike week, even though they're banged up with injuries. Obviously, Jacoby Myers getting up to speed. I think this is a situation where I'm kind of trusting the fact that Lawrence is trusting him right now, if that makes sense. He's one of the few receivers that Trevor Lawrence has been going to consistently and who's actually been producing for him this year. So he's had some pretty big games from a volume perspective, 11 targets in that win over Houston, 10 more looks in that loss to the Rams, obviously. So I think that the injuries above him have kind of opened up a clear lane. I'm not convinced that he ends up giving this role back. We'll see what's going on with Travis Hunter, now an injured reserve. But if Brian Thomas Jr. ends up coming back slow, I don't know. This role could be available for much longer than people think. And I think he's much more than just like a flex spot start. I think he's a priority add at this point. If you're looking for a receiver who's already posted some big games, some nice volume, and really a guy that his quarterback trusts to continue to feed targets, I think he's right in that category of someone that you want on your waiver wire. Troy Franklin, again, shouldn't be available, but is available in 66.3% of leagues right now. He's got a full-time role behind Courtland Sutton. He's actually led this team in targets for a bunch of different weeks this year. He opened the season second on the team in targets, but by week 6, he's basically been an every week starter and the de facto wide receiver too, in a pretty balanced Denver offense. But the touchdowns and the spike week ceiling are really strong. Over his last 4 games, he's at 4 touchdowns, including going 6 for 89 and 2 against Dallas, 5 and 40 and 1 against the Raiders. Exactly the kind of heater that you want for a guy that shouldn't be on waivers and you could stash on your bench and even start in some spot. I think that like earlier this year, he had that nice 8 for 89 yard in a score game, which was nice. And I think that the usage is really saying feature wide receiver, not just a fluke to me. Double-digit targets twice recently. He's watched Bo Nix kind of rack up a bunch of incompletions over that stretch, but the mediocre yardage in some weeks is more about kind of, I think, the quarterback volatility than any opportunity that's going to go away for Franklin. So I'm not going to be leaving this guy on waivers if he's still out there. He's been better than Courtland Sutton at times this year as well. So if he's somehow still on your waiver wire, this is probably your last chance to grab him before everyone realizes that the combination of volume, touchdowns, and locked-in role does not belong out there. Darius Slayton. Back-to-back big games from the field stretcher, Darius Slayton. 66.2% of leagues he is available, just went 5 for 7 and 62. In week 9, 4 for 4 for 89 yards in week 10. He's led the Giants in receiving both weeks. That's real recent spike week usage that we can actually bet on here. So those 11 targets, multiple chunk plays before Jackson Dart's concussion. It's kind of showing that New York actually feeds their downfield guy. Immediately, he kind of finds like the soft spots in coverage. He's been doing this for years. These deep shots are already dialed up in this offense, and it's kind of what this team needs. So he's one of those ones that I think across, if you just look at like his healthy games from last season, he kept kind of seeing like that 4 to 7 target range with a few scripted like vertical shots every single game, which is kind of the profile that we want. If we're going to be like slotting a guy in for a bye week, we want a guy that can actually go in there and make a difference, not just give us a floor. The Giants' chaos is a little bit more of like a perfect storm for these like elite, not elite wide receivers, but the elite downfield role type receivers, because if they're basically always down and they're kind of in these game scripts where they're going to have some downfield option, he's going to get a lot more targets than in an offense that's going to be playing from ahead, if that makes sense. So I don't think you can leave like spike week potential like this on your bench. And the wide receiver schedule is much stronger than the running back schedule down the stretch for the Giants. And I think he's one of those guys that you grab for ceiling, and you can kind of just put him on your bench and see if it evolves into anything else and spot start him if you need to through some buys. Malik Washington. Let's talk about Malik Washington. He's available in 84.3% of leagues. He's got locked-in volume since Tyreek went down. People don't realize 4 catches in week 5, 4 in week 6, 5 in week 7, 4 in week 8. These are the weeks after Tyreek Hill's season-ending knee injury. So that 4-game stretch of real bankable volume is definitely not in the boom or bust category. So he has, I think, quiet touchdown upside, and he's actually getting a few rush attempts in each game as well, which is kind of nice. He's got multiple games with 20-plus rushing yards, which kind of gives him even better floor. He obviously is returning punts as well. Miami's offense finally showed a little bit of life in this past week, though. So him as like a wide receiver, too. That week 10 upset against Buffalo operated as like the clear number 2, punched in another touchdown. And I think in this situation where the Dolphins are not going to give up, he's one of those guys that I don't think should be on waiver wires. And he's the exact type of waiver flyer that you might regret ignoring in a week or two. So he's one of those ones that I think if he is out there, you can grab him. They continue to have one of the worst defenses in football, and they're going to have to continue to throw.